Welcome to Learn English from Your Cat. 5 surprising tips. A journey where 2 sisters, a curious cat, and an unexpected adventure unlock the secrets to mastering English in the most unconventional way. Imagine landing in a foreign country with barely any English skills, struggling to order food, understand a joke, or even ask for directions. That was the reality for 2 Korean sisters, Jisoo and Mina, who moved to Australia, determined to master English. But they had an unexpected teacher, Momo, their cat. Their journey was filled with challenges, laughter, tears, and unforgettable experiences. Want to know how a cat changed their English learning forever? Stay until the end. This story might just transform how you learn English too. Chapter 1: The Leap of Faith. Arriving in Australia. Jisoo and Mina stepped off the plane, their hearts pounding with excitement and fear. They had dreamed of this moment for months, imagining themselves confidently speaking English in a new country. But as they walked through Sydney Airport, reality hit them hard. Every sign, every announcement, every voice around them spoke a language they barely understood. They looked at each other, gripping their backpacks tightly, realizing how far away they were from home. The first challenge came almost immediately when they had to fill out an immigration form. Jisoo hesitated, staring at the small boxes, unsure of the meaning of purpose of visit. Mina whispered, "Just write study," but then second-guessed herself. A long line of passengers waited behind them, making them more anxious. Finally, they scribbled their answers and stepped forward to the customs officer. He spoke quickly, his thick Australian accent making it impossible to understand. Jisoo nervously handed over her passport, nodding as if she understood, even though she didn't. After what felt like an eternity, they were waved through, only to face another challenge: finding their luggage. They had packed 2 large suitcases, filled with clothes, books, and a small pet carrier with their beloved cat Momo. When they arrived at the baggage claim, they saw one suitcase immediately, but the other was missing. They panicked, searching every corner, unsure of how to ask for help. Mina approached an airport staff member, carefully forming her sentence in English. "Excuse me. I cannot find my bag." The staff member smiled but responded with a long explanation. Mina blinked, not understanding a word, feeling her face turn red. Jisoo tried to translate by looking at her phone, but the Wi-Fi wasn't working. After several frustrating minutes, the staff member pointed to another area, and there it was, the missing suitcase, waiting patiently. Exhausted but relieved, they left the airport and stepped outside into the warm Australian sun. The city of Sydney stretched before them, modern buildings glistening under a bright blue sky. The air smelled different, fresher, mixed with the scent of food and traffic. A sense of adventure filled their hearts, but deep down, they felt lost in a world they couldn't fully understand. Their first task was to find a taxi to their apartment, but this proved harder than expected. Jisoo confidently walked up to a taxi driver and said, "We go to here," while pointing at the address on her phone. The driver frowned, not understanding immediately. Mina jumped in, trying again, "Can you take us to this place?" After a few awkward exchanges, the driver finally nodded, and they climbed in, exhausted but proud that they had managed to communicate. The ride through Sydney was overwhelming, with tall buildings, busy streets, and people walking quickly in every direction. They saw cafes, restaurants, and signs in English that they struggled to read. Their new home was a small apartment near a language school, with just enough space for 2 beds, a table, and a tiny kitchen. They set down their bags, looking around, realizing that this was their life now. Their first night in Australia was tougher than they had imagined. Hungry and too tired to cook, they decided to order food using a delivery app. But the menu was entirely in English, filled with words they didn't recognize. What is grilled barramundi? Is that fish or chicken? Mina asked, frustrated. Jisoo hesitated before choosing something random. When the food arrived, they opened the containers and stared at their plates. Instead of something familiar, they had accidentally ordered spicy seafood they couldn't eat. Feeling defeated, they turned to Momo, who had been quietly observing from her carrier. "Momo, you're the only one who understands us," Jisoo sighed, stroking her soft fur. Mina laughed, suddenly realizing something. "Maybe we should practice speaking English with Momo," she said, her eyes lighting up. Jisoo tilted her head, considering the idea. Why not? She won't judge us, and we need all the practice we can get. That night, as they lay in bed, they whispered to each other in the dark. "Do you think we made a mistake coming here?" Mina asked softly. Jisoo took a deep breath, staring at the ceiling. "No," she finally said. "It's hard now, but we have to keep trying." The road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges they hadn't anticipated. But one thing was clear, they were in this together. And with Momo by their side, maybe, just maybe, they could figure out how to survive, communicate, and eventually thrive in this new world. Have you ever faced a situation where you couldn't understand anything around you? Tell us your story in the comments. We read every single one. Chapter 2: The Silent Struggle. Finding work, making mistakes. Jisoo and Mina had survived their first few weeks in Australia, but reality was starting to sink in. Their savings were running low, their English was still weak, and they needed to find jobs quickly. Every day they searched online, walked into restaurants, and filled out applications, but many employers wanted fluent English speakers. After days of searching, Mina finally got an interview at a small Korean restaurant. She felt relieved knowing she wouldn't have to speak much English. The owner, a Korean immigrant, smiled warmly and hired her on the spot. "You'll take orders and clean tables," he said, making her feel slightly more confident. But when she started, she realized that most of the customers were Australians. On her very first day, a customer asked, "Can I have sparkling water, please?" The word sparkling confused her, making her hesitate for a few seconds. She thought he meant spicy water and panicked, wondering what to do. "Sorry, no spicy water," she stuttered, and the customer frowned in confusion. Her manager rushed over and clarified, making her feel embarrassed and small. Jisoo, on the other hand, found a job at a cafe, where she was expected to take orders in English. On her second day, a customer asked for a flat white with oat milk, a type of coffee she had never heard of before. She misheard it as black tea with oat milk and confidently prepared the wrong drink. When the customer received it, she looked confused and said, "This isn't what I ordered." Jisoo's face burned with embarrassment as she tried to apologize. The manager wasn't happy and warned her, "You need to listen more carefully next time." Jisoo nodded, feeling frustrated with herself, wishing she could understand faster. Every time she took an order, she felt anxious, fearing she would make another mistake. Mina also faced struggles at her restaurant. One evening, a couple asked her, "Could we have separate bills, please?" She nodded, pretending to understand, then brought them one single receipt instead. The customers exchanged awkward glances and politely repeated their request. Mina froze, feeling lost, and quickly ran to her manager for help. The stress of working in an English-speaking environment started affecting their confidence. Every mistake made them feel smaller, Every misunderstanding made them doubt their ability to improve. Some nights, they sat together in their tiny apartment, eating instant noodles in silence, too exhausted to speak. One particularly difficult evening, Mina broke down in tears. "I feel so stupid at work," she admitted, rubbing her tired eyes. "I make mistakes every single day, and I don't know if I'm getting better." Jisoo sighed, patting her sister's back. "I feel the same way," she confessed. "But we can't quit. We just have to keep trying." Momo, their cat, meowed softly and rubbed against Mina's leg as if sensing her sadness. Mina wiped her tears and smiled weakly. "Maybe we should talk to Momo more in English," she suggested, half joking. Jisoo nodded thoughtfully. "At least she won't judge us for our mistakes." From that night on, they made a small change. Every morning, they spoke to Momo in English. "Momo, are you hungry?" Jisoo would ask, practicing her pronunciation. "Do you want to go outside?" Mina would add, trying to form full sentences. It seemed silly at first, but over time, it helped them feel more comfortable using English. One weekend, they decided to take things a step further. They started repeating sentences they heard at work, practicing in front of the mirror. Mina rehearsed, "Can I get you anything else?" while Jisoo practiced, "That will be $5, please." The more they repeated, the more confident they became. A few weeks later, Mina had a breakthrough moment. A customer at the restaurant said, "The food was delicious, thank you so much," and without hesitating she responded, "I'm glad you liked it." The words came naturally, and for the first time, she didn't feel nervous speaking English. Jisoo also noticed small improvements at the cafe. She started recognizing common orders, understanding customers more quickly, and making fewer mistakes. One day, a coworker even complimented her. "Your English is getting better," he said, making her feel proud of how far she had come. Though their journey was far from over, they had learned something valuable. Mistakes were not the end of the world. Every misunderstanding, every embarrassing moment, every difficult shift at work was just another step toward fluency. They were still struggling, but now they were struggling forward. Have you ever felt frustrated learning English? Tell us your story in the comments. We'd love to hear it. Chapter 3: Breakdowns and Breakthroughs. The first year ends. Jisoo and Mina had now been in Australia for nearly a year, but despite their progress, they often felt like strangers in their own lives. Every day, they spoke more English than before, yet they still struggled with conversations beyond basic exchanges. At work, they could handle orders, answer simple questions, and even joke a little, but deep down, they still felt disconnected from the language. One cold evening in June, they sat together in their small apartment, exhausted from work. Mina stared at her phone, scrolling through messages from their parents back in Korea. "I miss home so much," she admitted, her voice heavy with emotion. Jisoo nodded, understanding exactly how she felt. "Sometimes I feel like we don't belong here," she said, wrapping her hands around a warm cup of tea. The loneliness was not just about missing family, it was about missing who they were before. In Korea, they were confident, expressive, and full of personality. In Australia, they often felt like shadows of themselves, always struggling to find the right words, always second-guessing what to say. One night, they attended a co-worker's birthday dinner, hoping to socialize and practice English. They sat at a long table, surrounded by loud, fast conversations they barely understood. The jokes, the slang, the inside stories, it all moved too quickly. Every time someone laughed, Jisoo and Mina exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what was funny. When someone turned to them and asked, "So what do you guys do for fun?" Mina panicked and mumbled, We like, food?" The awkward silence that followed made her stomach sink. That night, Mina broke down in frustration. "I hate this feeling," she said, tears rolling down her face. "I hate not knowing what to say, I hate feeling stupid." Jisoo, trying to stay strong, bit her lip and sighed. "I know," she whispered, placing a comforting hand on her sister's shoulder. But then, something unexpected happened. Momo, their beloved cat, jumped onto Mina's lap and nuzzled against her. Mina sniffled and stroked her fur, letting out a small laugh. "Momo doesn't care if our English is bad," she said, her voice lighter. "Maybe we should learn from her." Jisoo tilted her head, thinking for a moment. "You know, Momo never rushes to react," she said. "She listens first, then responds." Mina blinked, realizing what her sister meant. "That's what we're doing wrong," she said, sitting up straighter. "We're too focused on speaking that we forget to really listen." From that moment on, they decided to change their approach to learning English. Instead of trying to speak faster, they focused on listening better. They watched English shows without subtitles, pausing to repeat key phrases. They listened carefully to co-workers, mentally noting the way they formed sentences. They even started recording their conversations at home, playing them back to catch mistakes. Slowly, they noticed a difference. At work, Jisoo began understanding customers more quickly, no longer needing to ask them to repeat everything. Mina felt more confident in conversations, recognizing words and phrases she had struggled with before. One day, something incredible happened. At the cafe, a customer accidentally spilled their coffee, and without thinking, Jisoo reacted naturally. "Oh no. Here, let me get you some napkins," she said fluently. The customer smiled and thanked her, and only then did she realize she had spoken without hesitation. Mina had a breakthrough of her own at the restaurant. A customer complimented the food, saying, "That was amazing. You guys make the best dumplings in town." Instead of freezing, she smiled and responded, "Thank you so much. We're really happy you enjoyed it." It was a small moment, but it felt huge. By December, they reflected on the year and saw how far they had come. They still made mistakes, they still had moments of embarrassment, but they no longer felt paralyzed by fear. They had broken through their silence, learned from their failures, and most importantly, they had kept going. That night, as they lay in bed, Mina whispered, "Do you think we'll ever feel completely fluent?" Jisoo thought for a moment before answering. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I do know that we're better than we were yesterday." Have you ever had a breakthrough in learning English? Share your story in the comments. We'd love to hear it. Chapter 4: Confidence Unlocked, A Year of Adventures. Jisoo and Mina had now lived in Australia for over a year, and although their English was far from perfect, something had changed within them. They no longer feared every interaction, nor did they avoid conversations with strangers. Instead, they had begun to embrace the language, treating it like a puzzle they were slowly learning to solve. One of the biggest turning points came when they decided to take their first real trip within Australia. They had saved up some money and planned a short weekend getaway to Melbourne, excited for an adventure beyond their usual routine. Their journey started at the airport, but unlike the first time they had arrived in Sydney, they felt a new sense of confidence. At the check-in counter, Mina handed over her passport and said, "We have a flight to Melbourne today, and we'd like to check these 2 bags." The airline staff nodded and responded with a question about their carry-on luggage. Mina understood immediately and replied without hesitation. Jisoo smiled proudly, realizing how different this moment felt from the panic they had experienced at the same airport a year ago. Upon landing in Melbourne, they decided to explore the city on their own, using only English. They visited a famous cat cafe, where tourists and locals alike gathered to enjoy coffee while playing with adorable cats. This time, instead of hesitating, they joined conversations naturally. A friendly American tourist sitting next to them noticed Mina's excitement and said, "You seem to really love cats. Do you have one at home?" Without missing a beat, Mina smiled and replied, "Yes. We have a cat named Momo. She helped us learn English." The tourist laughed, intrigued by her response. "Really? How did a cat help you learn English?" he asked curiously. Jisoo jumped into the conversation, feeling more confident than ever. "Well, when we first moved here, we were too scared to speak," she explained. "So we started practicing by talking to our cat in English every day." The American smiled, impressed by their unique approach. "That's actually really smart. I think more people should try that." This moment felt like a small victory. For the first time, they weren't just surviving in English, they were enjoying it. Despite these improvements, there were still moments of struggle. One night, they went to a comedy show, eager to experience more of Australian culture. The comedian spoke fast, using slang and jokes that flew right over their heads. Everyone around them laughed while they sat in confusion, trying to piece together the meaning. Mina sighed, whispering to Jisoo, "I feel like we understand so much, but then something like this happens." Jisoo nodded, understanding her frustration. "I think we just have to accept that learning never really stops." They didn't let it discourage them. Instead, they started learning Australian slang, asking coworkers to explain jokes, and even watching local TV shows without subtitles. One afternoon at work, Mina decided to try using one of the new phrases she had learned. A customer complimented her service, and instead of just saying, "Thank you," she smiled and responded, "Cheers, mate." The customer laughed and nodded, clearly impressed. Later that day, she proudly told Jisoo, "I used my first real Australian phrase today." Jisoo laughed and teased, "Great, now we just need to understand the jokes too." As the months passed, they noticed more improvements in unexpected ways. One night, while walking home, they overheard two strangers talking and, without even realizing it, they understood the entire conversation. It was a simple moment, but it hit them hard. "Did you hear that? We understood everything," Mina whispered excitedly. Jisoo smiled, realizing that all their efforts were paying off. "It's happening, Mina. We're really learning this language." By the end of their second year, they no longer felt like outsiders struggling to survive. They had built friendships, grown comfortable at work, and even started helping other newcomers who were just beginning their own language journey. Their adventure wasn't just about learning English anymore. It was about becoming part of a new world, embracing change, and proving to themselves that they were capable of so much more than they had ever imagined. What was the first conversation in English that made you feel confident? Chapter 5. The Final Test. Fluency Achieved. Jisoo and Mina had now spent more than 2 years in Australia, and although their journey had been filled with challenges, they could finally see the results of their hard work. They no longer hesitated when speaking, no longer felt lost in conversations, and most importantly, no longer feared making mistakes. But they were about to face their biggest test yet, one that would determine just how far they had come. One afternoon, Jisoo received an email inviting her to an interview for an office assistant position at a local company. It was a job that required strong communication skills, something she wouldn't have dared to apply for a year ago. She stared at the screen, feeling a mix of excitement and fear. Mina noticed her hesitation and nudged her gently. "You have to do it, Jisoo. This is your chance." Jisoo took a deep breath and nodded. "I know. But what if I mess up? What if they don't understand me?" Mina smiled confidently, reminding her, "You've been working for this moment since we got here. Just be yourself." The day of the interview arrived, and Jisoo dressed in her best outfit, rehearsing possible answers in her head. As she walked into the office, she felt nervous but determined. When the interviewer greeted her and asked, "Tell me a little about yourself," she didn't freeze like she would have in the past. Instead, she smiled and confidently responded, "I moved to Australia 2 years ago to improve my English and challenge myself in a new environment. I've worked in customer service, developed strong communication skills, and learned how to adapt quickly." The interviewer nodded, clearly impressed by her fluency and confidence. Meanwhile, Mina had her own milestone moment at work. One evening, she was chatting with coworkers when someone made a joke, and for the first time, she didn't just understand it, she laughed at the right moment. One of her coworkers noticed and said, "Hey Mina, your English has really improved. You even get our jokes now." Mina beamed, realizing that this was the kind of fluency she had dreamed of. It wasn't just about speaking the language, it was about truly feeling comfortable with it. A few days later, Jisoo received the news she had been waiting for. She got the job. She and Mina celebrated, realizing that they had transformed from two nervous newcomers into confident English speakers. That night, as they sat in their apartment reflecting on their journey, Mina turned to Jisoo and asked, "Do you remember how scared we were when we first arrived?" Jisoo laughed, nodding. "Of course. We couldn't even order food properly without panicking." Mina smiled, stroking Momo's fur as their cat purred softly. "And now look at us. We live here, we work here, we belong here." Jisoo nodded, feeling a deep sense of pride. "We learned something important, not just about English, but about ourselves. We proved that no matter how hard something seems, with enough effort, we can overcome it." The next morning, as Jisoo prepared for her first day at her new job, Mina called out, "Good luck. And don't forget to speak with confidence." Jisoo laughed, grabbing her bag. "I won't. After all, if we could learn from a cat, we can handle anything." Their journey wasn't over, it had only just begun. But now, they were no longer afraid. They were ready for whatever came next. Have you ever reached a big milestone in your English journey? Share your story in the comments. We'd love to hear it. What if two brothers went from zero English to living their dream in England? Discover their inspiring journey of struggle, perseverance, and the power of storytelling that unlocked their fluency. Ready to believe in your own potential? Watch their story now and learn how you can achieve fluency too. Don't miss it.